Chapter 5. Things that go bump in the night. After his diversion with Marilyn in Los Angeles, Anton felt more listless and alone than ever before. He continued to play at strip joints along Ocean Park Pier and picked up odd jobs playing for nightclubs, lodge hall smokers, and stag parties. But Los Angeles had lost its appeal. Apart from a brief camaraderie with one of Lucky Luciano's Sicilian strong-arms, there was nothing holding him there any longer. He decided to return to San Francisco. Even though he didn't know yet he would earn a living, he knew the prospects could be no better or worse than in Los Angeles. Anton had no trouble finding work. He easily established a reputation as a reliable player for lodge hall strip shows. Little Caesar Granelli, a local promoter and caterer, arranged for Anton to play organ at various stag parties he sponsored at the Avalon Ballroom and the Beach Chalet. At the same time, Anton was also able to apply his talents as a photographer. He landed a job with Paramount Photo Sales, not affiliated with the movie studio, taking pictures of women in various stages of undress. He enjoyed his work, whether it was playing for women taking their clothes off, or photographing women exposing themselves in more indirect ways. When the Korean War started, Anton was faced with the possibility of getting drafted. In those days, a young man didn't run to Canada to avoid the draft, but he could enroll in college. Even though Anton had never bothered to finish high school, he didn't let that stand in his way. That wasn't a hindrance to someone who had wisely learned the tricks of a carny instead. In September 1949, he had enrolled himself in San Francisco City College as a criminology major and set about establishing himself as a respectable student. After classes, Anton made money the best way he knew, playing music. Through friends, he became involved with militant Israeli groups, some of which were running guns to the newly emerged nation. Organizations with names like Betar, Hashomer Hatzair, Poer Zion, the Stern Gang, and Irgun, some of which had already been likened to the Nazis due to their ferocious tactics. Paradoxically, at this time, was LaVey playing piano for reunions of the veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, those Americans whose idealism led them to Spain in the 30s to fight for what they thought right, though irrevocably branded as leftist. It was here Anton met men like Dalton Trumbo and Oliver Bessie, two of the most notorious members of the Hollywood 10. Bessie worked lights at the gatherings, unable to find work anywhere else. Anton's knowledge that he was being filmed by the FBI as he walked into meeting halls didn't seem to deter him. Anton saw that the Red Scare was not far removed from the church-induced hysteria which had caused thousands to be burned at the stake as witches and sorcerers, simply because they threatened the wrong people. His sympathy for groups labeled commies by prevailing conditions was undisguised. Anton's receptive manner was invigorating to the rejected patriots. He listened to disenchanted men sing songs about Madrid, Jarama, Brunetta, with little more input than a scratchy old recording. Anton would bring new life to their music. They trusted Anton, were rejuvenated by his willingness to learn and the fervor of his playing. The outcasts Anton played for appreciated his enthusiasm and regaled him with stories of the partisans who fought in the international brigades, hoping that some bit of them would survive through him. LaVey recalls, "The whole thing was very much like the escapades in old movies, like The Woman on Pier 13. There were two main rendezvous spots in San Francisco, a Jewish community center and a workers' collective downtown, where fellows would come in off the boat and went right down to meet contacts in the library of one of these places. I would be hired to play for a fashion show or variety show. Then I'd get through and go right down to the docks where crates of guns were being loaded onto ships to Israel. Many of the guns were ones that had been liberated during the war by American soldiers and were slated as DWAT, deactivated war trophies. But before they had a chance to be officially deactivated, they were cosmolined up and sent to Israel. They'd wind up in a crate marked menorahs or something, mostly German MP40s and P38s, but even Japanese Nambus, anything they could get their hands on. Afterwards, I'd get letters of praise from the fashion show organizers saying how much I'd added to their presentation. Little did they know what I'd been doing after their show. Those Zionist gun runners could be best called ideological mercenaries. They had a sense of, well, what I'm doing may not make a hell of a lot of difference, but at least I'm doing what I know best. Many seemed more concerned about refining and perfecting innovative weapons, technology they were experimenting with, than who their new relay or explosive was blowing up, though. I met Zionists that were right out of European prisons, not Nazi concentration camps, other prisons, that had lines of bullet scars up the backs of their legs from the machine gun fire. By that time, they were sort of ambivalent about the Nazis. Many of them had been decorated in World War I on the side of Germany. They fought in Spain against Germany, only to form dubious alliances with Nazis against the British in Palestine. Then were fighting to affirm the new state of Israel. There was always a lot of that, more than people have, until recently, even wanted to hear. There's a book called Zionism in the Age of the Dictators that confirms many of my suspicions about exactly what was going on between Zionism and Nazi Germany. I felt a culmination of that whole episode in my life many years later, shortly after the Satanic Bible came out. I met with Asaf Dayan, actor son of Israel's legendary defense minister Moshe Dayan. And he was glowing about the book, agreed with everything in it. He said it was exactly the philosophy they practiced, were forced to practice, in modern Israel. He extended an invitation for me to stay at his family home in Tel Aviv whenever I wished. As Anton's earnings from the carnival grew slimmer, he picked up jobs at burlesque houses, playing for headlining strippers like Lily St. Cyr, Zarita, Tempest Storm, and Evelyn West. At Oakland's El Rey Theater, where he worked, an ex-Army photographer named Russ Meyer was about to begin a new career as a legendary nudie filmmaker. Anton noticed the same phenomenon he saw in the carnival and at other strip shows he had worked. No matter how mesmerizing the woman performing on stage could be, invariably men would be distracted by a pretty girl in the audience who might accidentally show a little more bare leg above her stocking top than was proper. If she did it with enough apparent innocence, every eye would be focused on her rather than on the girl undulating in front of them. It was this type of prurient interest he had seen evoked at the Blowhole and Carnival fun houses. A formula began to shape itself in Anton's mind, which he eventually refined into the law of the forbidden. This law describes the very human phenomenon of being more compelled to the forbidden than by the allowed. In the burlesque theater, the pretty patron revealing more than she realizes is far more pruriently enticing than the stripper on stage, who takes off much more. At the Blowhole, the woman who is violated by the air blast will really show more than is intended to be seen. Dirty underwear? Or no underwear, perhaps. The viewer is seeing what is absolutely not intended to be seen. It then becomes nasty, and therefore irresistible. A competent witch learns these principles and discovers ways to apply them to her advantage. Anton outlined these techniques in The Complete Witch, reissued as The Satanic Witch some years later. San Francisco's Playland at the beach was one of America's great seaside amusement parks. Some of Anton's carny friends had off-season jobs there, and his affinity for midways drew him to the place. Up on the cliffs sprawled the legendary Sutro Baths, a haunted place if there ever was one. It was here one night that Anton met his first wife, Carol Lansing, the daughter of a Wells Fargo bank executive. He was immediately charmed by the 5'2" baby doll blonde. Carol would be described by friends as a miniature Jane Mansfield many years before Anton actually became involved with Jane. When Anton mentioned this to her, Jane responded without hesitation. Why settle for a miniature when you can have the real thing? Since Carol was underage, it was necessary for the couple to get her parents' permission before they could marry. While supportive of their daughter, her parents were suspicious of Carol's involvement with this menacing older man. Anton found that his looks did not find favor with most parents. While his hardened, sinister appearance was strangely compelling to girls, he had to meet his dates around the corner from their homes. At the time he met Carol, Anton was all the more alarming because of a deep scar on his right cheek. He received it in a row with a friend when he was 16, just before he left home to join the circus. The fight started over a snide remark about the morals of the girl Anton was dating at the time. Anton became enraged. When the fight grew violent, the other boy pulled out a knife and sliced Anton's cheek. He really had no choice. I was throttling him, and I had lost all consciousness of anything but the fact that he insulted the girl. The sad thing is that he was right. Sometime after the altercation, the boy who cut Anton was hauled down to the police station on an unrelated charge. While in a holding cell, he hooked his belt around a pipe overhead, wrapped the other end around his neck, and hung himself. Anton's first experience of unintentional retribution. Carol's parents were eventually charmed by Anton's reserved nature, musical talents, and commitment to their daughter. Seeing Carol's unshakable devotion, they could do nothing but accept their new son-in-law for all that he was. Anton, in turn, made efforts to settle into marital responsibilities. He combined his education in criminology with his talents in photography and a job with the San Francisco Police Department as a police photographer. Once again, he was faced with the worst side of human nature on a daily basis. On call 24 hours a day, he would race across town to photograph a murder site, suicide, auto accident, explosion, anything that required an investigation because of the gravity of the situation. There were enough bloody scenes to make Anton's mind seethe. Children spattered on the sidewalk by hit-and-run drivers, young women brutally slain by jealous husbands, bloated bodies fished out of San Francisco Bay, men shot by their brothers or best friends, little girls raped and ravaged. How is he to believe that there was some plan to such senseless carnage, that God was in his heaven watching over all these people? What possible reason could there be for giving such pain and suffering to innocent souls? There could be no God. People must be made to answer to other men, rather than depend on some supreme deity to dole out justice. No such God existed. There is no God. There is no supreme, all-powerful deity in the heavens that cares about the lives of human beings. There is nobody up there who gives a shit. Man is the only God. Man must be taught to answer to himself and other men for his actions. Anton saw there was a new representative of justice. Not some oppressive, patriarchal, white-bearded God, but a new human advocate. Someone who was not removed from us and shrouded in divinity, but one who understood the torments of being human, who shared our own passions and foibles, but was somehow wiser and stronger. Anton began to realize that most of our progress in science and philosophy had been achieved by those who rebelled against God and the church, or the dictates of conventional society. We needed a representative for that revolutionary, creative, irresistible spirit within us. Not a holy father, but perhaps a rebellious brother. Anton already knew the single figure who fit the bill. A deity whose rebellious, passionate nature had been described from the dark beginnings of time, either in awe or fear, or both. Satan, by one name or another, haunted mankind, tempting him with sweet delights, and enlightening him with blinding secrets intended only for gods. Satan's worshippers addressed him not as our Father, but as a compatriot who concerned himself directly with the affairs of men and women on earth. He was one who could be petitioned for powers of retribution, and who gave deserved rewards which a divine God could never understand. Instead of creating sins to ensure guilty compliance, Satan encouraged indulgence. He was the single deity who could really understand us. Since Anton had to keep his camera loaded and ready at all times, it encouraged him to indulge in snapping human interest shots when he saw something particularly striking. His photos from that time show the strong influence of Arthur Fellig, known as Ouija, who worked as a New York police/crime photographer in the 40s. Anton's studies have the quality of such sharp realism they border on the macabre, an early compatriot to the work of Diane Arbus. During the years he worked for the department, his photos attracted a fair amount of attention. He exhibited some of his work, sold a few photos to magazines, and won honors in a number of competitions. People were not necessarily pleased with Anton's photos of a murder site, the mangled wreckage of a car crash, or his no less disturbing perspective on a family outing at the beach, but they were compelled to look nonetheless. Anton, however, found the camera to be too limiting, too mechanical. Anton had already been painting for some time, experimenting, among other things, with techniques he gleaned from the works of Ivan Albright, who did the lurid painting for the color sequence in the film version of The Portrait of Dorian Gray. One such painting that Anton exhibited was a hideous portrait of a man in a state of semi-putrefaction, his own portrait in the attic, accomplished at the age of 21. The painting was placed in a gallery window to attract customers, but it was too disturbing. So many people complained that it was removed. As early as 1951, Anton's attitudes had been formulated enough to try to seek out a group of official devil worshippers. He visited a chapel of the Order of Thelema in Berkeley, followers of Aleister Crowley, who prided himself on being the wickedest man in the world, and supposedly in touch with the darker elements. Anton was disappointed to find the Berkeley bunch mystically minded card readers who emphasized the study of Eastern philosophy, Oriental languages, stars, and contemplation to reach the spiritual nirvana of oneness. A few years earlier, Anton had ordered Crowley's books from Jack Parsons in Pasadena. Equinox of the Gods, Magic Without Tears, Moonchild, Diary of a Dope Fiend, Sword and Song, Tannhauser, The Book of Lies, Yoga for Yahoos, and The Book of Law. When John Simmons' biography of Crowley, The Great Beast, came out in 1952, Anton concluded that the Thelemites' founder was a druggy poser whose greatest achievements were as a poet and mountain climber. Despite hysterical tales of the wild satanic orgies he was said to preside over, and the blasphemous insights his writings were said to contain, Crowley's followers were rather innocuous, much more ethereal than Anton expected. It occurred to Anton that people seemed compelled to manufacture fantasies about supposed devil-worshipping cults, no matter how bland the group might actually be. In 1952, Anton's first daughter, Carla Maritza, was born. Her dark curly hair and quick mind echoed her father's, forming a magical link between them from her birth. The following year, responsibilities with the police department expanded when Anton was assigned, through no request of his own, all the repeater 800 calls that came through various bureaus. This was the code number for nut calls, reports of ghosts, glowing shapes floating across the backyard, weird noises, UFO sightings, mysterious rays, all things that go bump in the night. Work was becoming more interesting. No one else on the force wanted the assignments, not out of fear of ridicule, as the term nut call would imply, but rather because of an implicit fear of getting involved with anything spooky. Anton was delighted. As a ghost hunter, he employed a theremin, an early electronic musical instrument, as an intrusion detector. Set at a fixed frequency, fluctuations in its pitch and intensity could be monitored should any presence present itself. Hollywood utilized the theremin as standard equipment for spooky background music in haunted house movies. He set traps for ghosts. A camera loaded with infrared film had a sensitive trigger to record any ectoplasmic activity. A tape recorder was employed to record any ghastly sounds such beings might make as they passed. He spent more than one night in a sleeping bag, laying in wait for the unsuspecting specter. Anton was indeed one of America's first ghostbusters. The modern ghost hunters are the ones who know something about human nature. That is truly the paranormal of our day, the hidden secrets of the human psyche. The new Carnackis and Jules de Grandins don't go around brandishing Tibetan thunderbolts and standing in protective pentacles anymore, banishing the old kinds of demons and monsters. The Delver would now confront malevolent forces on their own turf. The way they did in the old pulp magazines, would look the unsuspecting in the eyes and say, "You're not happy, are you?" You turn up your stereo full blast, listen to the incessant beat, and let the music whip you. Driving down the freeway, you roll your windows up tight and savor the sensation. You're a new slave, the walking dead, a pod person, and don't even know it. I know what you need even though you don't. Galley slaves you might have been, oarsmen pulling in time to the driver's drum beats. Here in my hand I hold a bullwhip that will vanquish you or liberate you, depending on your predisposition. You cannot fool me. You may be able to fool these men of letters, but you aren't fooling me. I know what you need. The modern ghost hunters are the experts of the supernatural. Freudian concepts now lost in dusty hidden texts. They discover the meanings behind meanings. Their Jehovah can't do it anymore. Never could properly. It takes a devil. Always has. If they want hell, I'll give them hell. Of course, most of Anton's experiments proved to be unnecessary, except to satisfy his own scientific curiosity. On his regular assignments, Anton was learning still more about the mysteries of the human animal. The scenario might run something like this. Anton would report to a house to find a harried couple frightened out of their sleep by unearthly moans coming from the locked attic. Crawling through the cobwebs and searching under the eaves of the house, Anton would discover the source of the unearthly moans. A rusty can whistling in the wind, or a poor half-starved cat who had fallen through a broken skylight and then had no way out. But when Anton would present the overwrought residents with the simple cause of their problems, their disappointment would be only too obvious. Was that all it was? Anton learned to spice it up a bit. Well, of course there was more to it than that. He would all but wink. But I took care of that for you too. A much more satisfying answer. Some sort of exorcism had been performed on their behalf, and Anton could leave them considerably relieved that their cherished fears remained intact. Again, he saw that, regardless of evidence, people would insist on believing what they wished to believe. His reputation as a ghost hunter grew stronger, and others began contacting him for investigations and exorcisms. Anton learned the fine art of providing remedies and maintaining mystery at the same time. Though most of the 800 cases made Anton cringe because of their foolishness and blind insistence on the supernatural, his reputation outside of the police department grew. Within a few short years, Anton had developed a steady clientele doing the work he enjoyed the most. People would pay good money to have their houses cleaned of spirits, or to be hypnotized, or to help them stop smoking, lose weight, or muster up the courage to ask for the raise they needed. Eventually, clients asked Anton's advice on how to make simple charms or cast spells of love or vengeance. Surely, someone who knew so much about the spirit world would be able to help them get their boyfriends back. And so he did. By 1955, he was ready to quit the police department and concentrate all his energy on further explorations into the black arts. To supplement his income as an exorcist and hypnotist, Anton returned to playing the organ, this time at a former speakeasy and house of ill repute called Maury's Point, located along the beach about 15 miles south of San Francisco. Anton had moved his family to a flat near Sutro Heights, overlooking playland at the beach, where 3-year-old Carla was serenaded nightly by the shrieks and laughter from the midway below. She wasn't apt to get bored either, by a lack of house pets. One of Anton's associates, writer Junius Adams, knowing of his love and history with big cats, had smuggled a 10-week-old black leopard through Burma and then Israel to give to Anton. The cat, named Zoltan, had the run of the house and took great delight in laying in wait at the top of the stairs whenever anyone entered the place from the floor below. When the unsuspecting guest reached a certain point on the stairs, Zoltan would fly full force at him and try to send his quarry tumbling back down the stairs with him. Some wary friends learned to call up to Anton before mounting the stairs to make sure he had his charge under control. Anton also recalls how Zoltan liked to climb into Carla's crib with her to sleep when she was a tiny girl. He and Carol would awaken to the slight creak of the crib as Zoltan jumped up and balanced on the sidebar, followed by a muffled plunk as he landed beside Carla, trying to be as quiet about it as he could. In the morning, Anton will find his daughter sleeping soundly, face pressed against the bars and leg dangling, while Zoltan snoozed contentedly, taking up 3/4 of the crib. When the cold ocean winds blew the fog over the cliffs near Anton's flat, into the tree-lined park that was once the grounds of Adolf Sutro's mansion, Anton would drape himself in his black overcoat and take Zoltan out to prowl beside him through the mist. Late-night strollers or people waiting for the bus would take one look at the ominous pair and run. At least one would-be attacker was shocked to discover that the dog at the end of the gleaming steel chain was no dog. Anton reveled in the reaction and felt he was discovering a formula for himself. He needed larger quarters where he would be free to exercise his eccentricities. Already, Anton was getting local press because of his odd practices and unusual house pets. Many of his cronies from the circus and carnival days had maintained friendships, blending well with the unusual personalities drawn to Anton's Sutro Heights flat as murmured rumors spread. He saw he needed a place with many rooms, separate from prying neighbors. A unique place he could decorate in his own fashion. One more suited to his growing reputation as ghost hunter, hypnotist, and magician. He needed time to be able to apply some of the magical formulas that were coming to a boil in his mind. His life was forming itself, echoing patterns that had followed him from his boyhood. There could be no denying the sinister directions which tempted him relentlessly onward.